it's Trixie, the Golden Witch. I'm the president and founder of Yig Studio. You can find me at Golden Witch Fire on all the social media platforms, and all my links are down in the description. Today I'm going to be responding to a comment. This comment came 11 days ago on a video from a few months back called Void Gazers Episode 8, Did I Tank My Channel? Featuring Oki's Weird Stories. It was an episode in which I talked to Oki, who is a longtime viewer of my channel, about whether or not I had tanked my channel and why, and where I was trying to go with things from there. And it's been almost 8 months since then, so there's been time to change gears and reassess and talk about what my channel's like now. But this comment was left just 11 days ago, so rather than being about the state of the channel at that time, it's really about the way things are now. And this comment reflects a sentiment that I've seen echoed by a lot of people. It's just the most recent one that has the most specificity to the way that I'm still doing things, which is why I'm interested in reading it. This is from Jay Park. This is going to be a long-ass comment, and I really hope Trixie sees this. Oh, I see it. I've been a fan of yours since 2014 or 15, whatever your Sword Art Online video started trending and blowing up. I feel so strongly about the content you made as Digibro. There was something so unique about how you made your videos. Your content was irreplaceable. The ways you talked about certain anime, the passion you had for anime, and the fact that you are a raging lonely otaku was relatable. Of course, I followed you on the After Dark channel, and I felt a real strong connection to you, especially when I listened to your ramblings. I'm really unable to quantify what made your contact so special other than the fact that it felt niche and irreplaceable. However, what I can quantify is what I am dissatisfied with the channel and the content being produced on here. First, I know you had much of your personal relationships fall out due to your transition or any other issues that arose. I understand not everything works out as you intended. My problem is your lack of ability to disclose information that is required for people to engage with your newer content. Look, I'm not asking you to disclose very sensitive information about your personal life. The only thing I want is for you to talk honestly about the fallings out of several personal relationships on your YouTube channel. I am still so confused about why content was discontinued. I'm still confused who these random people are who keep appearing in the newer Void Gazers videos. The person I signed up to see was you, not these other people. Furthermore, I am so glad that you are happier and more fulfilled living the lifestyle that you live now. However, please understand that just as you changed completely as a person, your content has completely changed alongside it, in my opinion, for the worse. I feel like I really have no idea who you are and what you want since you changed so much, and it's not a bad thing that you changed, it's fine. The problem is you're not really being personable to the audience with those changes. A lot of audiences felt like they knew the character Digibro. Even when you made changes to your channel when you were still Digibro, you were infinitely more personable and providing much of your insight and thoughts in a digestible way, namely in vlogs where there was only you and you talking. Maybe I'm missing some context or something, but I'm so confused why you're not making content on your own that is more personable. Vlogs were a huge part of your YouTube brand, and I don't mean those blogs featuring the random people that I don't care about, I mean you specifically. I'm really convinced that if you've made a video just explaining the situation about all the personal fallings out, so you had all the new friends you've made and how wonderful they are to you and how positive their influence has been on you, etc., I think people would have more warmly received them and being incorporated into your YouTube channel. Okay, enough about that. I want to talk more about the Anime Alphabet series. It's good, I enjoy it. I've watched every single one that has been released up to this point. But as much as I enjoy this content, I can't help but feel that discontent could have been made by literally anyone else who is an anime YouTuber. Your content is so docile now. It's keen on being palatable and uncontroversial. It's limp and lethargic. The contents of the video is pretty similar to Digi, but the feel of the content is the total opposite. Okay. So for anybody who's unfamiliar with my history as a YouTuber, I got started doing My Little Pony Friendship is Magic analysis videos towards the back end of 2012, going throughout 2013 and a few months into 2014. And my intentions when I started my channel under the name Digibrony, because I had recently changed my online handle to Digibro, shortening 21st Century Digital Boy, which it had been for since 2006. And this was 2012 when I became Digibro, and then Digibrony because I was a brony, and I thought it would be funny, that it lent itself so well to just having an NY tacked onto the end of it. That was the name I first became popular under. And I had intended in the beginning to cover My Little Pony for 1 year and then make a shift into being a video game analysis channel. And the reason that I wanted to do this as a career is that I had, growing up, always wanted to make original fiction works. There were periods where I wanted to be a director, periods where I wanted to be a writer, and I've also always been working to try and become a musician. And the reason for all these is that I have tons and tons and tons of ideas in my head of images and plot lines and characters and songs that just come to me. And it makes me want to go and make stuff in those fields. But I never really got enough into the actual act of, say, like drawing. Like, you know, if I have an image in my head and I want to translate it into a comic, actually trying to draw and realizing like how weird my art looks, and you know how, like, for me to develop myself as an artist would involve, you know, developing the personal style that I have until I could start to apply that to like the images in my head that don't look anything like it. But it just feels so distant to me that, you know, and this is true of all those categories, like making film, particularly if you're somebody who's ever tried to make amateur film, you probably have experienced that you can't just like point a camera at something and film it. You know, there's so much that goes into staging a shot to make it look right, that you have to learn. And the process of making that happen is not fun to me. There are people like my brother Victor who love that process, where that, you know, rather than the approach of wanting to realize a shot that exists already in his brain, he would be more interested in seeing a scene, figuring out what he could do, what shot he could get out of that, because he knows all the equipment and the technology. So for me, the one category of creativity where I could like fully process ideas and get them out was writing reviews and analytical style content of media. And it kind of just is something that I would do no matter what. I had a blog that I was writing, my anime blog, and just because of the force of me becoming interested in things, watching them, and then having something to say about them, I kept writing the anime blog. But I didn't know any way for that to be profitable. And like even at times where I would get praised in the comments, or people, you know, were enjoying the blog, or the view count started picking up, there was no way to make money off of it. So it was just the only thing that I did so naturally that it didn't require any kind of effort or self-discipline in order to, you know, in order to get better at it, aside from like listening to people's advice. Like the biggest thing that kept changing my writing was that I would either read someone else's writing and try to copy that, or get advice from somebody who was a better writer than me that, you know, improved my ability to do it. So, you know, the fact that I made these kinds of strong connections with other good writers benefited me to be able to write as well as I can now, and that I kept writing, kept reading more analysis, kept finding better voices and trying to copy them, and, you know, taking in all of the stuff that they were saying and applying that to what I'm doing. All of that, you know, made it so that I could do this thing pretty well. And so when I discovered that it was possible to make money doing it on YouTube, I pursued YouTube as the means of doing that. And so my intention was to become a video game analyst. In the meantime, did the My Little Pony thing as a build-up to it. And so my intention was always that, like, well, surely the audience, you know, for Pony will only be around for so long, and they will, most of them probably like video games, so it shouldn't be too weird of a transition. But by the time I got to a year and a half into the Pony career and I was done with it, and I wrote it out a lot longer than I intended to, and got a lot more complex with it because of the fact that it became a community thing for me. And this is where the Digibro persona really kind of like started to emerge, was around midway through the My Little Pony days. And the reason that this persona emerged is that Digibrony was originally supposed to be a very distinct character from myself. I saw myself as basically the most unclean personality that there could possibly be on the planet. And it was just out of like sheer self-hatred. It wasn't really out of me being such a grimy person. I just really didn't like myself. And so, like the legends of my griminess were often overstated on the internet, where people thought I like didn't bathe and just smelled bad all the time and was like insanely overweight, which like the most I've ever weighed in my life is 190 pounds. I am 5'8.5". So I've been like on the cusp of being obese before, but like, the memory of Digibro is like this fat, drunken. Oh, I was also like an alcoholic, according to this. Never really been in, like, I know alcoholics. I was never even close to that. I maintained being kind of a lightweight. And it's really just, again, that like I was pushing like myself to the edge of what I could like what my psychology would allow me to within my own self-image, if that makes sense. Like I was so adamant about not being more extreme than I was that it kept me on that border, but like it was still like I had this constant feeling of I need more because I hate who I am and I don't know what to do about it, So maybe I need more attention, maybe I need more money, maybe I need more alcohol in my body, maybe I need better drugs. I don't know. But like I had this deep self-destructive anger, and I didn't want any of that to be portrayed in the Digibrony character, because even though I was making the videos for bronies who are ostensibly adult male My Little Pony fans, I knew there was a good chance that children were going to see these videos as well, because it is a show made for kids. So I wanted it to be friendly to them. I didn't want it to be something that if your mom hears you watching it, she's gonna like smack you or something. So I tried to keep them swear free. I had an upbeat like, hey every pony, this is Digibrony, and I'm here to tell you about the cool things in this show. But after I'd been doing it for about 6 months, I inevitably had to become a personality within the sphere, because people wanted to interview me, they wanted to talk to me, they wanted to be my friend. They were, the brony community was not only very known for like collaboration, but it was like an endless number of very small creators, most of them young and autistic and not very good, who want to be friends with the bigger creators because the bigger ones all collaborate with each other and have like this internet community. But as I got, when I first started going to the conventions, I quickly realized that all those people who had gotten big in the early part of the brony fandom were like secluded to themselves, and they didn't really interact with the rest of the people because it becomes overwhelming so fast. And I learned that from diving in and just taking every friend request and doing every interview and being this media personality all of a sudden. And at first I was still doing it like a very milquetoast sort of dry character. I wasn't trying to be like extremely raunchy or anything like that until I got involved in the pub crawl. And the pub crawl was a late night brony radio show that aired to like 30 people for 2 hours to 4 hours a night, 2 nights a week, from like 2 to 6 a.m. for my time, because it was run by an Australian guy named Cider. And the pub crawl was where we were just like totally ridiculously trashy, over the top, like just having the most vile discussions possible, getting drunk every night, and just it was the raunchy adult show that I got to do. So like, because I was doing that show, and because of the fact that, I got more and more involved in like talking to people, going to conventions, and being a face, then like more of myself started to bleed into the Digibrony character. And when I got to season 3 of the show, that was when I was at the height of my channel, was as a brony YouTuber, was season 4 rather. Season 4 was airing, and I was covering it episodically. And this was the first time I really started to learn like what a general audience reaction is going to be to your opinions, to, you know, an expression of opinions. And like every time I was negative about anything about the show, I got a lot of backlash for it, and just lots of people would misinterpret and misunderstand the points I was making. I realized I had to be clearer and clearer about my statements, and like at some point I realized like I don't want to cater to the audience that is coming to these videos. I want to cater to just the people who by this point I had identified as like the ones who get it and who understand where I'm coming from well enough that if I did bleed into the character, they would be able to understand. And so there was this era at the end of my Brony career called the S4 Diaries, where the pony was redrawn to be like this really rough drawing with a cigarette, who looks tired all the time, who is an alcoholic, and who is basically clinging to My Little Pony for hope and like using it as a reflection on all the stuff in their personal life. Like it was a very emotional series of videos that got half the views of the videos that came before and doubled my Patreon, because like these are the people who really seem to care about me on like, you know, connect with me in more personal of a way than just that I was talking about My Little Pony. It was about the way I was talking about it. And so that was the core audience that I was counting on to come with me if I were to talk about something else, because the Brony community is not kind to people who stop making Brony content. They really don't care about anything else. It's sort of infamously, you can hear that from any other content creator in that sphere. So, you know, I knew it was going to be a risk, and especially because I ended up leaving the community in a fashion that was... I was unhappy with it, you know? Like, I was unhappy with the way I was being treated as somebody who had... particularly within the analysis community, because I created it. There was nothing called that or resembling it before I literally like made a big deal out of making it a thing. And like 6 months later, it had gotten so big that I was forgotten about, that I was no longer the biggest voice in it, that, you know, and particularly because of the fact that I wasn't interested in being a part of the community. You know, I was tired of the way that community functioned. And I've always struggled with community because I'd never really been a part of one that I could, you know, fit into. And I've tried creating them, but I'm not a good community leader. So, like, building a community around me doesn't go well. You know, I'm still on the search for a community that I could actually feel a sense of belonging in without having to run the thing myself when I'm not good at it. When I reached the end of my Brony career, I became Digibro again, and I started talking about anime because of the fact that that's what I had been blogging about for so long. I was very confidently knowledgeable about it, and I wanted to get back into it. And also, when it came to video games, tons of other games analysis channels had sprung up in the time that I was doing My Little Pony, and for the most part, anytime a new game comes out that's big enough, that's going to draw like attention from viewers, everybody talks about it. Like all the big channels that are already established are going to do their thing about it. And you know, there's always opportunities that come up where like maybe a new RPG comes out and it's like, are you going to be the one who does the 5-hour video on it, you know? But you have to really give a fuck. And I'm not as interested in like a lot of the hype beast video games, I guess you would call them. Like the games I like tend to be obscure or old, and I'm not necessarily good at making people who don't already care about something care about it, unless it's, you know, got a lot to be said about it. Like the best I think I've ever done with that is the Great Anime Director Who Time Forgot video, where like nobody knew or cared about this dude, but you know, there was enough to go on. There was enough meat in his career that I could make it something that people could care about. That might not be true for some obscure video game, you know? So that's sort of why I ended up going into anime. And I kept trying to pepper, you know, my videos throughout with like, here's an occasional game review or here's an occasional film review. And none of that did well. It was always dramatically underperformed compared to the anime videos, which themselves took a while to build up. You know, it was towards the end of 2014 when some of the anime videos started getting attention, and I started gaining patrons again. And, at the time, basically, I was living at home. I was making very little money off of any of this at any point, the first few years that I had Patreon, I made just shy of minimum wage as an annual income for where I live, which we have the lowest minimum wage you can have. It's like $7.50 an hour or something like that. So, I was making sub minimum wage for the first couple years because I couldn't run ads on a lot of the videos. It took me forever to figure out how to get around copyright, content ID. And, my Patreon was not that big, and it was a brand new concept when I launched it. So, it's not like I was making a bunch of money. I was basically just doing this out of desperation, that it was like the one thing I could bring myself to do. I was just so depressed and hated myself so much, by the time I reached my 20s, that and I had largely given up. I got medicated when I was 20, and I spent a year and a half as a NEET, just basically indifferent to the fact that I wasn't doing anything except consuming lots of media, writing about it on my blog sometimes, and watching My Little Pony. And throughout my blogging career, I would have long spurts of not posting. Like, months go by, I'm not posting, just because I would get so stressed out about everything in my life, about the ideas of posts I wanted to make. There's no consequences for any of this. It's just I was afraid to tackle one of my favorite anime and not do justice to it, and I would get anxiety and not be able to bring myself to write that post. And that's on top of the anxiety I was feeling about my homework and everything to do with school. And I was miserable through high school and college. And so, being in a state where I wasn't necessarily miserable, I was just not doing anything for a year and a half. It changed my outlook on life because it made me realize that I had been so desperate for so long that, I thought I needed to change things right away or I was going to die. And then I went a long time without changing anything and didn't die. And that kind of made me realize, okay, baseline, I'm able to live. I'm able to live with myself. So, what can I do from there? What do I want to build on top of that? If I'm able to live with myself, how can I live better? How can I live well? And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with my self-image. The best I ever looked as Digibro, would have been right when I stopped being Digibrony. I had broken up with my first girlfriend, and I spent a lot of time working out over a summer, and I got relatively fit and thin, and I was shaving my face, and I looked really baby-faced. I guess you can't find these videos now. Well, maybe some of them are uploaded somewhere, but there are certain vlogs where I'm standing in front of my big shelf of anime DVDs and I look pretty adorable, I guess. But I could not figure out how I wanted to look on camera. My favorite way to look was camera pointing down at me kind of looking up, looking really cute. But it also made me look extremely gay, and at the time I didn't know if that was what I was trying to put out there. So I just couldn't figure out what was the self-image I wanted, and it felt like there was no winning with my body. And I hated being on camera because I couldn't set it up to look good. And if you watch the 2014, 2015 vlogs, you'll notice there's way more production value than the vlogs that are actually famous from 2016, 2017. And that's because I was trying to make myself look good. I was trying to look clean and presentable, and I had all the lights on, and I had the collection behind me, and I was trying to be healthy. And that was my ideal version of, what I could be at that time. But it wasn't successful. None of those videos took off. Setting up the stuff always took forever. I would always have issues with the camera going in and out of focus, and just all kinds of bullshit that now I know how to deal with easily, but at the time I didn't know how to solve these problems. So I just kind of gave up on vlogging for a while. And then 2015, I wasn't particularly active. If you go back and look at that year, I started the year off with the Psycho-Pass versus Psycho-Pass videos, and those didn't perform well initially. They've done better now that they were recollected into one big video years later. But, those were underperforming. I did the Nanoha series of videos, which are still not very big, and were underperforming at the time. And then I spent the fall, working on video concepts that never went anywhere. So it wasn't until I did the Asterisk War Sucks at the end of 2015 that things started picking up. And in 2016, it was specifically when the last part of Asterisk War came out, my Patreon blew up a whole bunch, and I gained a whole lot of subscribers, and this was when the channel really started thriving. But in spite of this, my mentality towards myself and my art was always that I was independent, that I didn't want to be involved in any companies or groups or anybody that was going to try and take advantage of me, because I'd heard nothing but horror stories about people who get involved with stuff. So the only people that I was really working with at all by this point were the members of what had originally been called the Horseshoe Crew, and what people better know as the Procrastinators. And that was basically, in my time in the brony sphere, I'd talked to tons and tons of people, and the only people I had really befriended were Tom Oliver, who was the first friend I made in that sphere, and who I think I'm still cool with. I still talk to him on Twitter sometimes. Endless Jess, who's the next person that found out about me, and he's been basically off the grid and totally distanced himself from this whole group and doesn't really want to be associated with it. And then there was Nate and Ben, the brothers, best guy ever, and Ben Saint, Hypocrite or Give and Take, and later on the Devu, who the Devu was my editor, and then sort of worked her way into being friends with everybody and being a part of the podcast. So that was the main core. Oh, and Munchie, who was a fan of mine during the Brony era, and then kind of became a part of the group later on, more towards 2016. So that was the Procrastinators group, which became a podcast at the end of 2015. So right around the same time as the Asterisk War Sucks, leading into this era that I'm probably best known for is the 2016-2017 era. And that's because of the fact that the Asterisk War videos blew up, and then I did some really big videos that winter season about Konosuba and Erased and Myriad Colors Phantom World, and then so at the end of the winter season, and then right after that summer I had the How to Recognize a Terrible Anime, that whole 3-parter. And between all of those, my channel blew up, way bigger than it was before. Way, way, way bigger. That was when it went from, around 100,000 to around 350,000 subscribers. That was when the view counts went from, my biggest videos were 350,000 views to my biggest videos were 1 million views. So it totally changed the scale that I was operating at. Even though I had, by this point, had been a popular YouTuber for some time, I've been making money off the platform for years, this was the first time that it was oh wow, I'm successful and a known figure, and regular anime fans know about me because of this stretch. And it really was just that 6 months or so that was the most powerful, and those are still the most powerful videos. Those are still the videos that do the best, are the Asterisk War Sucks, the complete edition, and the How to Recognize a Terrible Anime in just one episode. And those really just represent the culmination of all of the thoughts I had about bad anime, basically. Everything that I had experienced between getting back into watching anime in 2014 and deciding to watch every single show that came out in that season, rewatching Sword Art Online and hating it, with my brother Victor, and then just the experience of seeing isekai shows continually get popular over and over again in the wake of that. All of that culminated in the Asterisk War Sucks and how to recognize a terrible anime. And then even, a year after that, there was the how I learned to stop worrying and skip Akashic Records. And that was basically me saying, like, hey, I'm not even going to try. Like, I'm not going to keep trying to watch these shows that I know I'm going to hate. So this era is over to some degree. So it's 2016. My channel's blowing up, and I don't know what to do with it. I literally was just like, I owned, like, most of the money I had made up to that point, aside from the couple $100 that I'd been giving my dad for rent, and whatever I was spending on food, I would mostly buy equipment. And it came to a point where I had all the equipment I wanted, and basically I was just really fucking lonely. And I was sitting in a room full of anime shit. I had this big audience online that I could talk to, but I don't know these people. We can't hang out. And like, all I wanted to do was just be able to hang out with someone in person. I don't like calling people. I don't like these sort of long distance relationships. I much, would prefer to be able to have someone here with me that could be watching the thing with me or playing the game or doing whatever. That was my hope. And I was always trying to rope the people around me into doing my job with me. The Digibros series is obviously the biggest example. Me and Victor, my brother, had years worth of releasing 2 videos every day, or 1 video a day for again, years. And, all these podcast style Let's Plays were just like the one excuse I had to get somebody to talk to so that I wasn't talking to myself, doing all these endless podcasts and finding an excuse to look at video games or whatever. So, and I had my old friends, all the friends I had from high school that used to show up in all the videos and stuff, and eventually just, they weren't really interested in being a part of the content that much, and it was overly personal because I would just talk about everything going on in everyone's lives. So, it came to a point where, like, if I want to be able to have people I can talk to all the time and make this type of content with, that I'm, trying to live my life in content, basically, then it has to be other content creators. They're the only people who are, willing, so to speak, to create this public version of their lives. But as we ended up doing that with the procrastinators, it was bad for us. It was bad for everybody because it created this skewed perception from the audience that they knew a lot more about us than they did, where, each of us is putting so much of ourselves forward into the character we play online that it feels like a full person. It feels like a fully realized person, but it's not. It's, maybe a couple dimensions of your life. But, like, for instance, when I speak into a microphone, I have a natural, like, sense of what I know. I know what sounds good coming through a microphone, and so I program my voice to sound like what I know is going to sound good. If I was using a different microphone, I would use a different voice because I would be thinking about, like, what does this thing pick up? What is my voice going to sound best like through this? And so if you only ever hear me speaking through a microphone, you're hearing nowhere close to, like, even my most common voice. You're not hearing the way I talk to people casually or, intimately or anything like that. And none of those other sides of me are present in the videos. And they don't have to be for you to have, some semblance of a relationship with me as a person. Like, you can, if you have a relationship with that character and we can talk about that, then that is something that you and I can connect on. But it's the way that people think that they are literally experiencing the same things that I am because they connect to the stuff that I'm talking about in the videos. And it's like, that's just the one place that you and I collide, that's the one place that you and I happen to be similar, whereas everything else going on with me could be totally different. And for the most part, most of that difference for me was internal, because it's not like I was doing a whole bunch of different things from what I'm talking about online. Like, almost everything that I was actually physically doing, I was talking about, but not everything I was thinking about or feeling, or, my actual reactions to what I'm doing. And there was a time where Victor said to me, and I'm sure I've brought this up countless times, that Victor one time said on Digibros, you have a way of talking about yourself like you're talking about someone else. And it made me realize that, like, I do that because I don't feel like I am the person that I'm performing. You know, I am acting out of a character that doesn't reflect my own feelings or emotions sometimes. And it can be weird because I don't always entirely know where it begins and ends for me. In 2016, all I was doing really was playing Digibro because I didn't know what else to do. And I didn't like this. This wasn't fun. It was stressful. It was me constantly trying to think of something to make a video about so that I could make videos instead of being miserable by myself. And, like, all I would do is leave the house to, like, go get a sandwich, you know, watch other people's videos. I watched a lot of YouTube at that time as well. So, like, I was watching tons of YouTube analysis videos and stuff like that, and then writing them, finding things to argue about, you know, talking to people on Discord and comment sections and all that kind of stuff, which is very incomplete interactions. And, like, I would listen to everybody. I listened to everybody because I didn't know who to listen to or what I was looking for, like, who I'm trying to be. So every voice affected me, you know, and I would just feel the need to be a part of every conversation and to, like, you know, to explore. It was very much experimentation. It's like, I don't know what my stance is, so I have to hear every stance and, like, participate in every conversation until I figure out, like, where am I in all of this. In 2016 in particular, and that's the era that I have to think of because that's the only era where my vlogs were popular, was in late 2016. Or mid to late, because it was that, like, maybe it was April or May. It was around then that I started the vlog series, and it was literally 4 videos in a day, the first day. And the first one was losing my mind in a room full of anime posters, and it was just me talking about how much I hated all the posters that I was surrounded by. Because, like, you know, at some point in my teen years, my method of dissociation was to just, you know, be looking at as much stuff that's not me as possible, or stuff that reflects a self-image that I wish I had, or a place I wish I was, or a person I wish I was with. So, you know, my walls were covered in anime posters because that was what I had learned from other otaku, from the stuff I'd seen online that seemed cool to me. It was just the idea of living in this, like, endless chaos of colors. But once I was actually there, like, you know, most of the posters aren't that good. And I would just sit there and overanalyze them and scrutinize them. And, like, I collected most of the stuff that I had in my late teens. So by my mid-20s, I didn't care about most of it anymore. It was just there for aesthetics. It was there to, you know, create the image of the otaku room. But a big part of my existence within that was criticizing it, was saying that none of this is actually that cool, that actually most of it sucks, that when you think about it, it doesn't hold up, that it doesn't make me feel like a better person for consuming it, you know? And, like, I feel like a lot of people, maybe because they were only ever really experienced my negative content, you know, or me, like, tearing down other people's arguments, weren't really seeing what I was constructing in the places where I talk about stuff I like and what I want to be like. Because it's hard for me to imagine, like, having watched all of my content back then and thinking that that was a person I wanted to be at all, or that, like, I wasn't trying to do something different. Because, yeah, the point of it was that I was losing my mind and miserable, and it sucked, and I hated it. And I was talking all the time about how I wanted things to be different. And, like, in that period of 2016, I basically just exhausted. Like, the reason I started making the vlogs was that I had a lot of ideas that I didn't know how to write a script for. That I didn't know how to make objectively good doesn't fucking exist into a scripted video. So I did a rant on it. And sometimes those rants, I would eventually think about the subject more and more and find a way to say it more concisely and figure out how to make it into a written video. But for the most part, like, a lot of that content I used to do was out of trying to introduce other people to a new idea or a new way of thinking about something that I had, where I said, I thought about it, I present my case, and then I present my case again, as I understand it better. But eventually I ran out of stuff. Like, I just ran out of new observations. I made all my cases. Like, anything I couldn't do in a scripted rant, I did in an unscripted rant, and then eventually I had done it all. So then it became like, okay, well, how do I find new things to talk about all the time, and what's a fun way to talk about them so that I can keep this whole, videos out all the time and keep having something to do going on. And so I came up with stuff like doing Manga Mondays and DVD Tuesdays. Like, every day I'll review something different in short form, or then like stuff like throwing darts at a board and watching whatever show I get, or Crunchy Roulette, and just like all these different ways to basically use up my own time to make some videos that other people might enjoy. And it was very scattershot what people did or didn't like, and it was always like, every video I made was controversial. No video I made was 100% embraced or 100% reviled. So it was always really difficult to figure out, like, which direction do I keep going in, other than by view counts. Like, whatever's successful obviously is a thing that I can chase. But, like, it came to a point where people just didn't seem to be interested in any of the ways that I was thinking of to keep this thing going. Like, once I ran out of big vlog ideas and it became like, all right, let's do podcasts where I review every Pokemon movie or whatever, then it just was diminishing returns. People weren't as interested in that because it didn't come from that place of like realization and passion and like, oh, I just figured something out and I'm sharing it with you. But like, again, I shared the things I had figured out. So I don't really know what I could have done to go from there other than, shaking things up massively. But I kept experimenting. I kept trying. I really want to talk about, in this comment that I'm responding to, they said, the fact that you are a raging lonely otaku was relatable. And I'm not a raging lonely otaku anymore, which is why this is where I think the disconnect comes from, is that 2016, early 2017, I was raging because I was lonely. I was starting fights as an excuse to be able to talk to people. Like, I made more connections through apologizing for having started bullshit with people than I did through, because I don't know how to approach people. I don't know how to, like, out of nowhere become someone's friend. I'm very good at out of nowhere becoming someone's enemy and then, like, finding a way to walk it back somehow to where we're cool again. But I was still in the mindset of, like, I'm independent. I only roll with, like, the most ruthless, the most, like, we'll say whatever, we'll do whatever type of people, because I didn't want to have to police what I was going to do. I wanted to be able to do whatever I want at all times, say whatever I want about the, whatever part of it, because I just wanted pure expression. So, like, I can only be around people who can handle that. And that wasn't a good idea, because the kinds of people who can handle that are, the most prone to deliberately try to push things as far as they can. And for me, it was never really about pushing things as far as I can. It was just about, I happen to be opinionated about certain things and I'm not going to back down about my opinions. But it's not that I'm going out of my way to be edgy, going out of my way to push the envelope or to mess with people or anything like that. And so, like, I ended up being more involved with people who were like that in 2017. And then, for me, my dream was that I would never have to do this job by myself. That, like, because of the fact that I had spent all that time trying to look good and failing, the approach to the vlogs was, let's not try to look good. Let's just look like shit and film it anyways and get the ideas out there because people will watch it. But, like, in the end, I wanted to be able to build on that to change it because of the fact that it wasn't that profitable or popular. Like, these videos were getting 10,000, 20,000 views, and I had some patrons who were patroning because of them, but I also had lots of patrons who were patroning for other reasons. So, like, it was never an obvious thing to stay in this lane. of making these types of vlogs, like, they just weren't so successful that it took away from the main channel, you know, as like the strongest part of my career. And like, once those videos started weakening and people lost interest because of the different tack that I took towards them, you know, there was no reason to continue it. And I've never found a way to really bring it back that would be not only even as successful as it was, but to make it as successful as I wanted it to be. Because again, like, if it were up to me, if I could go back and do it all again, I'd be on Trash Taste now, because that's the ultimate show, is where everything just works because there's a set and there's lights set up and you have a crew who can come in and, you know, press the buttons on the cameras, and someone else is going to edit it, and all you have to do is show up and look decent and talk about anime in a charming way. And, you know, I never nailed the look decent or be charming part. So, like, when all those opportunities, when stuff like that show, when the people were meeting each other to make the decisions that were going to lead to the way that anime YouTube is now, I was abrasive. I was not inviting. I did not join the club. I did not try to be a part of, you know, the sponsored content or the people who were making the stuff that was eventually going to be big. So I missed the boat on being like one of those anime YouTubers who is now sponsored and pushed up and like sort of, you know, put at the top of the sphere because of the fact that they proved themselves and they proved that they could play ball, and I did not, you know. And so when I hooked up with my ex, that was my attempt to try and like basically create a doppelganger that I could do my job with. And, you know, she was very much somebody who was like trying to leave her life behind and join mine. Like, my life is boring and I don't like it. I don't like the people around me. This interesting person online has opinions I agree with, and like I could see hanging out with them all the time and just watching anime and talking about it. So that's what we ended up doing. And for me, it was like, you know, this is the crew that I want. It's like somebody who's always around, who I enjoy being with, who I can do the things with and have fun, and then we can make the content together, and I don't have to do any of it by myself and be, you know, miserable and looking like shit alone in a room full of anime crap. And I really saw a lot of potential in her to be able to eventually be as good at doing it as I am, just by force of doing enough of it. It really just does take practice. But, you know, she wasn't warmly received, and that was the content I was really trying to go in on, both so that she would get better at it and so that, you know, I didn't have to do stuff by myself. But, like, people didn't really like that content, and there wasn't enough outside of it to, you know, to keep it successful. So, yeah, it really did feel like people were trying to tell me from all the way back in late 2017, I miss you being a lonely otaku in your room, angry and screaming about anime, because that's where a lot of the audience themselves is. And to me, that's always been like very insulting and strange, because my take as an anime fan has always been that these stories are meant to be aspirational. They're meant to tell you, show you what you need to do to get what you want, the way that these characters get what they want. And you are meant to take on the same attitudes as these characters. And like for me, as an otaku, particularly somebody who's been into like otaku-oriented media and who talked about the otaku hero's journey for a while, like what that is about is never giving up. It's about constantly trying to get what you want and just break through, keep having revelations, keep making connections until the thing works. And things were not working for me in 2016. So, like, to remain that person would be totally, to me, going against everything about the identity and everything I was talking about in these videos. I was talking about how to get away from being me and people wanted to be me, but I was already them. I was just them, except I can articulate being them well enough that they pay me to be them. But like, the goal was never to make enough money to continue doing what I was doing. It was to make enough money to not have to do what I was doing anymore, that I could pay other people to do the editing, that I could pay other people to help out with this and that, so that I have time to work on other skills and be able to do more than just make analytical videos about anime, because that was never my dream. It was just the thing that I happened to do so often that, you know, that it could naturally make me money and that people tend to enjoy it. I don't see doing that forever. Like, eventually I'm going to run out of anime or run out of audience, because, like, I mean, I don't even think YouTube's going to exist forever. So, like, for me as somebody trying to live off of creativity, or, you know, at the very least off of content creation, whether you want to call it creative or not, I have to be able to go beyond that. I cannot be somebody who's only liked because of the fact that I am like alone in my room talking about anime. That is just never a permanent state of being, not only because it's bad for my mental health, like I was in a very dark place at the time, but also because it's just not long-term tenable, you know? So like, obviously I was going to have to start talking about something else and doing it in a different way eventually. So the first route I took was to involve my ex heavily in my work, and that didn't really pan out. And I was also trying to make like bigger videos than before. That didn't really pan out. And then when I started trying to like recover from it, I started making like long form independent vlogs again. Like there was the Gecko Estate vlogs when I first moved into Boston, or the Meta Hole. Actually, that was before that. There's just like a bunch of these long-form, rambly vlogs that I launched to try and regain some of that, you know, the people like you who say like, oh, there was something about the way you made those. And maybe I did with some of those people, but those videos just weren't getting views. Again, like it wasn't building back up. It wasn't the same, because like when I was in the beginning of the human content machine era, it really was like several vlogs a day. I was rolling the dice over and over again. Not all of them were successful. Only a few really got like a lot of views. And like, I didn't like them that much. Like, I would watch them back when I posted them, but like I couldn't go back and rewatch them because they're all so poorly phrased and argued, and I wasn't that articulate of a speaker. And I just think that, you know, they are better off to have been turned into scripts later, and then, or for the points to have been made better in different forms later. So to me, like, they were only ever really kind of meant to be notes on like on the way to something, if that makes sense, like journal entries as I'm figuring things out that eventually I will be able to say better. So I guess that's why I don't feel like they need to be salvaged or anything like that. I really do think it's just a problem of there not being something to take its place. Like, people wouldn't be so upset if those same types of vlogs had always kept coming out, and there was like, you know, if there was a new version of the old thing wouldn't have been missed. But because there was never a new version of it, then it's like, well, that's all I ever got out of like this style of video you did during this 6-month bracket is my favorite style of video that ever existed. And it's like, yeah, but it was so circumstantial to who I was and what my lifestyle was at the time that I couldn't possibly recreate it. I just couldn't. I couldn't, and without, you know, returning to being a person I don't have any desire to be. So, and didn't at the time. So that's why it's like, you know, it's hard for me to connect with people who like miss the Digibro persona, because I don't miss being that person. I don't miss being trapped in that mind state, you know. And to continue responding to this comment, talking honestly about the fallings out of several personal relationships on my YouTube channel, I did talk about this. There had been a video called Yig Studio and Its Future. I took that down because some of the stuff in it's not accurate anymore, but originally it did clarify what happened with Cantent and with the procrastinators. And I mean, the long and short of it is just simply that Nate did not want to work with me on Cantent anymore, so we stopped. It was, he gave me a list of factors. The biggest one at the time was that I was planning to move into an RV, which did not end up happening because I couldn't get one. And to start, like basically traveling around the country. And he was like, it'll be too hard for us to line up schedules to do this show, every couple of weeks, because that's how frequently we were recording it, if you're traveling. And I was like, I'm willing to accommodate that, make that happen. But again, that wasn't the only reason. Like, it was also that he didn't really want to be associated with Riley, my producer, particularly after the Ralph video. He just doesn't want to be involved in drama. And I'm somebody who is a lightning rod for drama. I also changed my identity. So, like, as he put it, I started this show with Digibro. I didn't start this show with Trixie the Golden Witch. And, like, the cachet of Digibro as an intellectual property was a big part to him of, like, the show. So all of that is why that stopped happening. Didn't seem to be a big deal to Nate. There were people who have gotten mad at me, like, I can't believe Nate moved down to work with you and then you sabotaged the relationship. And it's like, Nate lived in a shithole apartment where people were getting shot in Cincinnati. Moving to Virginia Beach is like a dream. He lives in a great place. He gets to surf. He hangs out with Victor all the time. He's happy. I didn't do anything to fuck him over. And meanwhile, Ben Saint basically just, after RadCon 4, after a few months, made it clear that I didn't want to edit my Brony documentary anymore. I didn't want to make it. I just thought it wasn't good. I didn't like the footage. It was also pre-transition, so it was kind of awkward. I didn't like the way I handled the whole thing. And initially I said that I would love to get back together and refilm, or like film another part and like kind of intercut it in with the other one. But this was not a popular idea, and I don't really know how, for Ben, it ballooned from there, because it started with just Ben is mad at me because I won't make the Brony lecture. And then it became Ben is paying my patrons to unpatron me, releasing my content for sale to people. Like, it just, all kinds of nuts shit that he's done. And I don't really want to get too much into it because, like, honestly, I just want him to go away. Like, I don't want to keep I've made the mistake of thinking that I needed to fight Ben and the Procrastinators podcast because that's the platform he uses to, talk all this shit about me. And I don't think that will really help because Ben wants to fight. So, like, ultimately, I'd prefer to just pretend that he doesn't exist as much as I can. But yeah, like, for the sake of explaining in this video, that's really what came down to it, is Ben, continually insulted me and fucked with me. And Gibbon, I don't like that she just has allowed this, has participated in it, has continued to be on the show with Ben. Their whole attitude, and I did this ill-conceived podcast on Who Are These Podcasts where I was talking about their show, and it was poorly planned, and I was really emotional because I was really mad at the way that they were talking about me, and just the tone of how they approached this whole situation is like Ben is some kind of holy warrior defending the rights of all the people who I have fucked over the years by, like, not delivering on something that, they paid for. And, I understand anybody who maybe is, like, gravitating towards him out of their own anger that, like, I didn't deliver for them personally, or that my content's shifted in a way they don't like, or whatever reason they have for backing Ben. I get it if you're like, I'm not a fan of Golden Witch anymore, and yeah, fuck her. But, like, I don't understand Ben at all. No comprehension of what is driving this. Other than that, I get it's making him money. Just, like, riling up people who don't like me is an easy way for him to monetize that for his own gain. I guess that's the only thing, and he seems to be doing a decent job of that. But, for me, it's like, I'm already in a position where I've got all this stuff that I owe to people that I haven't been able to deliver on, that I'm still, holding on to. And meanwhile, I've got Ben just like laying into me and making it harder and harder for me to actually do anything because it's like diminishing return. Like everything I try to do to build myself up, if somebody's constantly tearing me down below that, there's just nowhere to build, so it's pretty obnoxious. Honestly, in this comment, you talk about how I've changed so much, and I don't really think I've changed very much at all. I changed the way I identify myself. I changed the way I dress. I changed some things about my lifestyle. Most of my opinions are the same, and if not, I've made it evident, or I'll keep making it evident through, making videos where I talk about the changes to my opinion like I always have. I've always had, evolving standards, evolving tastes. I've always approached things in different ways each time. I don't think any of that is particularly different, and I even think that, like, the content I'm doing now in many ways represents, like, what it was always supposed to be like in my own mind, but I just, like, wasn't good enough to actually write these types of videos. And I'm highly disagree that the Anime Alphabet series seems like it could have been made by literally anyone. No, it could not. It just couldn't. Most people couldn't do it. Like, some of these videos, somebody could have done, like, if we're talking about maybe the Sailor Moon video, I think that's the closest to something somebody else could have done by doing all the same research and presenting it similarly and, talking about the show in the same way. But these are all very personal outlooks on these shows. They are extremely robust projects. They're huge. I get them done in an amount of time that would make most people cry if you told them they had to do it in that amount of time. So I really don't think most people could do Anime Alphabet. I think it's pretty uniquely mine, and it really does, to me, represent all the best things about my writing. That I do my research, that I'm good at getting into the heads of the people who created it, that I, analyze it from all angles, talk about, like, the full perspective of what makes the show good while also talking individually about aspects that make it good. Not just anybody could write those videos. This bit where it says, maybe I'm missing some context or something, but I'm so confused why you're not making content on your own that is more personable. And I made this video specifically because, yeah, I do agree with that sentiment. That is the part of this comment that I agree with the most, is like, I do think I should make more vlogs that are more personable because, again, it was a big part of my brand. It was one of the reasons people patroned me for a long time, and it helps me to connect with people a lot more. And I definitely feel very disconnected from my audience. I feel like I don't, like, everybody's got totally different perspectives on me and what I'm doing now and how they feel about it and where I've really fucked up and how badly they feel about me based on my fuck ups and all that kind of stuff. So, I do agree that if I was making more videos like this one, it would be better. It's just a matter of having stuff to talk about. And what my lifestyle is right now is, like, I'm making Anime Alphabets and other videos in between. I've got the Cowboy Bebop one that I wrote like 2 hours, 90 minutes or so about just the first episodes of the original show and the adaptation. I'm working on Haibane Renmei. I just did Ginga Eiyu Densetsu. I'm also watching Inuyasha for the letter I. I don't do a ton of casual anime viewing outside of the stuff that I'm doing for work. But when I do, I try to make content out of it as much as I can. And, I did a bunch of these shorts last season because I was really hoping that YouTube shorts were going to work better. And they really don't. They kind of suck right now. And people weren't really excited about them. So I quit doing that. And, this season I just did a video on the new Attack on Titan episode. But basically, like, if something comes across my purview and I have something to say about it, I'll try to make a video about it. But, like, again, I'm not in the same position I was before of having all these observations I've made for all this time that I've never been able to explain, pouncing out of my head and like trying to get them all to people. Like, I've made those points. The influence that I had as Digibro is already permeated out. There's no, like, Digibro doesn't have to continue to exist for Digibro's ideology to exist, because it's thoroughly out there. It's thoroughly, swam through the internet. Like, you could go watch like a Hazel video, and I think that's a better version of like a Digibro video, basically. And it's not that far off from what I'm still doing as the Golden Witch. It just has more personality in it, like more of the, like, I'm gonna mention that I'm a lesbian and married and like that kind of stuff that I used to put more of in. And the main reasons I don't is, one, that it can date the video, and also that, like, I want it to be for other people. I'm not trying to make the videos for me the same way. Like, it used to be that, like, even though I was making it for other people to watch, it was because I wanted those people to think something that I had thought. And I'm not approaching it that way now. Like, I'm not trying to convince you of something per se. I'm just trying to present something that, like, will make you feel inside like you understand your own feelings better, if that makes sense. Which I guess is what I was always doing, but like, I'm not as much approaching it like I'm giving you a revelation, because there's always been people who already get it and people who don't, and people who are going to see it as a revelation regardless of whether I present it that way. But like, there's always been this undercurrent in those old vlogs of like, they were responses to comments. Like, a lot of them were, I read something and it made me upset and I had to talk about it. And again, like, once you've talked about everything, once you've sort of sorted all that out with people, everyone's on the same page. I don't need to make a bunch of videos explaining to you stuff that you already know at this point. And then there's also this part about, all the new friends I've made, how wonderful they are, how positive their influence has been on me and all that. And I think a lot of that comes through in the videos. Like, reading this comment, I was really wondering, have you watched all of the Void Gazers episodes? Because, like, there was this, almost we'll call it a meme for, like, a little over a year ago when I first started introducing Riley and Mint and Bird into my videos, and people were like, who are these people? There needs to be an introduction. And so we've done the introductions. Like, we've laced all that stuff throughout the Void Gazers. I would think it would be pretty hard to watch all of that show and still have no idea who any of them are. But like, they are, again, it was another representation of the dream I've always had of not having to do this by myself, of, being around people who are as interested in creating something as I am and as willing to go through with figuring out how to make it possible as I am. And like, when it came to the procrastinators group, like, from the beginning of the podcast, my goal, my dream was for all of us to live in the same area so we could all work together. We talked about this a lot. That, at one point I had two people from it living with me, Devu and Ben, but ultimately the only person in that group, well, there's two people in that group who actually I could, be around and just naturally, spontaneously feel the need to create something and then actualize it. And that would be Jesse and Nate. And those are the two people who, like, when we get together, something's going to happen for sure, because it's what we want to be doing. It's why we would be spending time with another person, is that we're trying to make something together and not just trying to hang out, not just trying to, shoot the shit, even if that might be incorporated into what we are doing, if we're doing a Let's Play or something like that. Basically, I always had it in my mind that if all of us were in this one location, then we'd all be able to do something. And I think the biggest issue we had as a group is that nobody really wanted to be the camera op. Like, we all wanted to be the star. We all wanted to be on camera. We all wanted to be the one doing the dumb, goofy shit. Nobody wanted to set up the set. Nobody wanted to turn on the cameras, and like, there's a couple people who would do it because someone has to, but nobody wanted to be doing the production work. Riley is the first person I had ever met who's like, I am here to help you realize what you want to do. That's what makes him a producer. And, you know, he's not somebody who had like the means to throw a bunch of money at me and be like, create something. It was more like we both met and were like, let's make something together, even though we don't have any money, you know, like let's figure out what we can do because we want to be able to work together, because we both are interested in collaboration and we have a lot of the same tastes. Particularly, both of us rap and are involved in the same sort of podcasting universe. So when I first met Riley, we devised this plan that I wanted to get an RV and we would go around the country and meet people and make stuff with them, because that's pretty much what we like to do. And it would be an excuse that instead of trying to build a village where everybody lives and works on stuff together or whatever, instead we just go to people who want to make something, make that thing, and then go do the next thing. And I still think that sounds like an amazing way to live. And it's still pretty close to like what I would like to do in the long term. Because of the fact that Riley, he is with Mint Salad, who is a really good artist. She does great graphic work. And, you know, having an in-house artist who is willing to just kind of do whatever anybody wants. Like, it was so different. When I lived with Ben and I lived together for 6 months. When he moved in, I commissioned him for an avatar for each of my channels and a banner for each of my channels. $50 an avatar, $100 a banner, maybe 200, something like that. And he did not even start working on it till like 4 months later, and it took him weeks, and it didn't look that great, and I ended up using it anyways. But like, that's how long it took. Like, when he moved in, I thought, I'm going to have an in-house artist. The first thing I assigned him took him 6 months. When Mint moved in, it was like she's just churning out drawings. Like, she's always drawing. It's just what she's doing, and she wants ideas. She wants stuff that's going to, particularly if she thinks it's going to help everybody benefit and we're all going to, you know, make something out of it. So, yeah, Mint would just, you know, provided me all these designs. They were all willing to help with like printing shirts and getting into merchandising, which is all stuff I wanted to do at the time. And like, basically, it was at a stage in my career where all I wanted was a crew. A crew landed on my doorstep. And then my ex ended up leaving. And when that happened, it upended so much about my lifestyle and what I had been building with her that I really had to shift my approach towards my content and lifestyle. And the people who were around, my crew that could help me do that, I was like, let's jump in and do like whatever ideas we have that we can do together. And like, initially that mostly meant traveling, because they all already had plans to go to California, to drive across the country, to go to Burning Dick, and, you know, to just basically drive around and meet all these people and go to these events that they already were planning to do. And so I just kind of tacked myself onto that, helped out in making it all possible, made as many videos out of it as I could, and released that stuff. And really was hoping that people would just like take the adventure with me and feel some of whatever I was feeling about it, and, you know, and connect with it. And most people just kind of look at it as like, well, I don't know what this is. Like, this is too different from what you were already doing, and I don't know what it is. And to me, innately, everything I do is kind of the same. Like, everything I do comes from the same energy. It comes from being me. It comes from my worldview. So, like, to me, all of it flows into each other very naturally. If you're listening to one of my rap songs, the lyrics are about the same things as my podcasts. If you're listening to my podcasts, then those are decompressed versions of the ideas I'm presenting in my videos, you know, to some degree. So, for me, it's always felt like, okay, you know, this should be easy enough to understand. I've had friends in videos before. I've had people come into my sphere and interact and do these things. But it was just, I think, the fact that so many things happened at once, where my relationship ended, or, well, you know, I gender transitioned, my relationship with my ex ended, and then a lot of my friendships with people who I'd been working with ended, and I had new friends who I was working with instead. And all of that happening at once felt like people lost track of the narrative or something. But that's what the narrative was. That's just what happened. I lost touch with a bunch of people, gained some new people into my life, and started making things with them. As much of that story as could be told has been told through the content. But, like, people want there to be, like, a guide outside of that. Like, something that invites them to, like, why this happened or, like, you know, fixes the transition. And maybe this vlog can help to do that for some people, because I do think I'm going into a bit more depth, or even just explaining it more casually or more loosely or whatever it takes to make people understand it better. Because, you know, that's what I struggle with. It's like, I don't know what way of presenting this will like most make you understand. I don't know if this video helps. I don't know what helps. All of this happened a year ago at this point. So, like, for me, it's crazy to think that there are people who are still wondering, like, what happened back then. And I'm like, haven't we been over it a few times? But, you know, I do understand, again, that I haven't been making this type of video. And it really is, again, I don't really know what people want the most. Like, you have a vague description of it here, but is it that you want, like, specifically, hey everybody, it's me, I'm about to watch an anime I know I don't like and film my reactions to it for 3 hours and, like, edit that together and release it, and, like, maybe it will feel exactly the same as before, and be just as enjoyable. But, like, even back then, that would have been, like, a video that got 20,000 views at a time where my main channel was getting, like, hundreds of thousands. And, you know, the only reason those videos could be done is that I was not doing anything else. I would be doing a main channel video and then doing vlogs, and then doing a main channel video and then vlogs, and then sometimes I'd eat. You know, and I'm not doing a ton of shit right now. Like, right now, my life is boring. I'm not going on a bunch of trips. I don't have a bunch of people living with me. You know, Riley and Mint live in Kentucky. I go to visit them every once in a while, and we film Void Gazers, and we film rap reviews. And it's been a real struggle to get anybody to give a fuck about any of that. And, again, for me, the reason that content exists is that I'm willing to do things when other people are around. That, like, Riley will say, hey, let's make a review of this thing, or let's film some stuff. Like, let's make something, let's do something. And then we do it, and we see how it turns out. And, you know, a lot of the times it just doesn't turn out that well. But, like, there's not a replacement. There's not something I would be doing instead. I'm doing it because I'm hanging out with these guys, because I want to do something with someone else. I don't want to sit around and, you know, watch an anime I don't like by myself for 4 hours, especially not if my fiance's home. You know, like, filming a vlog like this, I only have a few hours during the day where nobody's home, and, you know, where, like, I'm going to have a lot of time to myself to be loud and expressive, you know, in the middle of the house. I'm not in the same situation. Like, back then, I lived in a room that was totally secluded from the rest of my house, you know, and nobody could hear me, and I could do whatever I wanted up there, all hours of night, you know, and I wasn't even trying to be up during the day because I had no one to hang out with and nowhere to go. And, like, now I'm at least trying to, you know, be available during daylight hours. You know, I want to spend time with my fiance. I want to, you know, spend time cooking and cleaning and taking care of myself, which are things I did not do back then. I want to spend time, you know, just being human. Like, I wasn't human. I was a human content machine back then. And I still kind of feel that way just because of the fact that I can make stuff so fast that, like, I'm capable of this insane production, but it's not literally my life anymore because that sucked and it wasn't fun. And I'm having more fun when I get to hang out with other people and make stuff, and when I get to travel with my fiance, and when we go to events, and when we, you know, in order to make something out of any of that, then, you know, there has to be an approach of, like, let's film some content here. But if that content's not appealing to people, then there's just nothing to be said about it. There's really nothing to be made out of whatever we're doing, or, you know, the intrigue of my personal life or whatever, because people aren't interested in who I am now. People who were interested in Digibro because he was a lonely otaku, are not interested in Trixie the Golden Witch, who travels all the time and has friends and, you know, shows up on camera in a different way. Like, it's just a different, yeah. So in that way, I get what you mean, that like I'm a different person and things have changed, and it can't be, it cannot be Digibro lonely in a room full of anime posters. But to me, that was never the point. That aesthetic trapping of it was never what made it interesting. And like, I look at that and I feel bad for myself. Like, I look at those videos and I'm like, wow, you look like shit. Wow, you talk like shit. Wow, you are so aggressive. Wow, you're so like, dismissive or so arrogant and this and that. And like, just all these things that, maybe some people admired even about me that I did not admire about myself, and definitely don't in retrospect. And like, so, for me, looking at myself as Digibro is sad. It's really depressing. It's not something I want to spend any time doing. I don't watch my old content. I try not to really acknowledge it. I'm trying to edit these fucking Blu-rays together of The Plebe and the Weeb, which is like me at my most sad and depressed. Like, the weekend of RadCon 2 or week of RadCon 2 was fucking miserable. It was just a panic attack the whole time for me. So like, it's not fun to look back on any of that stuff, to look back on Digibro as a character. It's not a person I would want to be again. And, I'm shocked anybody wouldn't get that after, like, if you ever listened to Gay and Dead, the 2017 album, that to me is the capstone of, that is me putting Digibro in the coffin, so to speak. And it just took a long time for the heart to stop beating, I guess. But like, the last track on that album, Who the Fuck is Conrad, is about how I had spent so much time playing the Digibro character that I was losing track of who I actually am, because I just couldn't find a space to express myself outside of the very limited range of this character. And so, again, it felt like all of the other ideas, all of the other inspirations, all of the communication I wanted to have with people, all the ways I wanted to be besides Digibro were just wilting and dying. And I couldn't remember who that person was anymore. And that was, the point of that song is, like, I've been consumed, or I let my own art completely eat me. That's the lyric. So that wasn't what I wanted. And when I went out on my own after that, shortly after that album released was when I moved out of the house and hooked up with my ex. And, I attempted to build this new self out of that, a self who is dependent on another person. And that was the big mistake I made for the next 3 years, was that I didn't try to build an independent self that I could be without her around. I just didn't think I could live with myself. Like, I'd gotten to that point of, I don't know how to love myself. I don't know how to build a version of myself that I can like. But if I can be successful with someone else, then my love for them can justify my own existence, was sort of how I was looking at things. And it reached a point in that relationship where that wasn't true anymore. And if I had to say what the death of that is, there's an album I made called Millennial Dadcore. Hold on, no, the artist is Millennial Dadcore. The album itself is called Melodic Shitposting, a Cry for Help Productions. And that was an album that I made when my ex and I had moved into a nice neighborhood, and I wasn't like, my cost of living wasn't ridiculous anymore, and things were starting to pick up, and the channel was doing like okay, I guess, but I was kind of back in human content machine mode, and it wasn't really paying off that much. And like, whenever we went out in public, I would just become totally dissociated from myself. And so I would just be like in the grocery store, just like feeling numb and making up songs to myself and stuff. And that inspired that album. And it was like a period in life where I just couldn't figure out what was going to fix this. Like, I don't know how to make myself likable to myself outside of the context of what I can either provide to someone I love or, what I can provide to the audience, until I transitioned. And the transition really came from me realizing through my neurotyping experiment that I had been ignoring my own emotional side. That like my attempt to constantly rationalize everything and and have a clear cut reason for why I behave the way I do or whatever was betraying me, because it wasn't actually like I don't actually behave out of that logic. And people had pointed this out to me plenty of times, that like, my behavior doesn't line up with with what I'm saying that it is, to some degree. And that put me in a position of like, why don't I behave truer to my intentions? Like, why is it so hard for me to to actualize myself? And it's because I'm not who I want to be. And so I started my transition basically realizing that if I were if I were a female version of myself, basically, then I would know how to perform that. I would know how to be that person. And so, the closer I can get to being able to like reflect my own feelings in the way that I present myself, the happier I am, the more capable I am of that, and the less of that self is consumed with anger and loneliness, because instead I'm a person who is making connections, who is able to talk to people, who is able to understand what was holding me back before. And even if I can't fully articulate that in a way that would like help somebody else out, part of that is because like helping people is hard, and like it's easier to do through abstraction. You can't just tell someone change this thing about your life. You have to kind of inspire them to make a change in their own life. And, there's a lot of ways to approach that. But it's not like my mission right now. My mission is basically to take care of myself, to be the best person that I can be for myself, figure out what I'm looking for in life, period. Which for me, you said here, like, I don't really understand what you're going for, or in life, I guess. And like for me, the dream is basically just for me and my fiance to own a truck and trailer with which we can, because RVs are too high maintenance, to travel around the country at our leisure and go places and see things and record adventures of that. And to meet people and make stuff. Like the main things that I enjoy doing are like hanging out with other creators, coming up with ideas and realizing those ideas, like, when the spark is there, when all the inspiration is high. I like, short-term projects that have a lot of passion put into them. And I like traveling. I like seeing new things. I feel the least like anxious when I'm just in constant motion. So whether that be hiking through somewhere beautiful or driving through somewhere interesting, like, those are the places that will make me feel the most aware, because I'm just taking in something new all the time. And like through my travels, I've seen so much shit that I didn't even know existed, that, changes my perspective on what the world actually is, which influences the way that I'm capable of writing both, fiction and analysis. Like, to me, the only way that I can expand as a writer is to go out and experience real life, because, getting all your experience from media makes it easy to talk about media within a certain framework, but you can exhaust that, where like I've already talked about everything that like generically makes a show good or bad or whatever. It's more about, what experiences those people are drawing from and how I can relate to those experiences. And like, that allows me to progress. So to me, it's like, there's no way to stagnate, like to stagnate and be good. But like, there's also no way to change and be loved by everybody. Given that I can't really imagine there being like one type of content I could do that would please everybody, or even a majority of people, I've pretty much resigned myself to doing just what makes the most sense, or like what comes to mind. So, talking about Cowboy Bebop, I've got a JoJo video coming out, like shows that are connected to me in some way, that are popular, that have reasons to be talked about right now, that's like obviously the most powerful targets for me as a video maker. But in terms of like what is, you know, beyond the shows, beyond Anime Alphabet and stuff like that, you know, I tried to have Void Gazers be just this general variety platform for any random ideas that happen to come into my mind, those of my friends. But like there really isn't, I guess, a like daily driving form of Trixie content. The way that like as a Digibro fan, there was just stuff all the time. And even if you didn't like a lot of it, there was always more. And if there wasn't enough that you liked, then you were definitely complaining about it. For, you know, I mean, again, these are complaints I've always gotten. The only kind of people I really can count on to always be down for what I do are people who are just always down. Like, people who are down for me as a human. And, again, it's hard to be down for me as a human because you don't know me as a human unless you've met me. You know, like, this is still Trixie the Golden Witch. It's not Beatrice, who I am. It's not the whole of what it's like to be around me or to talk to me or anything like that. It's just an outpouring of an idea that, you know, for me, it's been festering for days. I've been planning this video. I've been thinking about what I'm going to say in it. So it's not like this is free-form conversation with Trixie the Golden Witch, you know. It's more a peek into my mind and where I've been. So in that sense, like, it's hard for anybody to be like, oh, I'm just down for whatever you do because I like you. Unless you are somebody who, you know, can really form that type of connection without expecting anything. You know, like if you were to say, you know, I like what you're doing now, but if it completely changes and I don't like it anymore, I'll still support you because maybe I'll like it again sometime, or just because you did so much for me already that, you know, I'll keep supporting you just because I want you to live. Like, those are the kind of sentiments that I'm always hoping for, that, like, deep down, you know, I've always wanted my career to be as non-transactional as possible, and I've made huge mistakes all throughout by trying to sell people shit. Like, in the beginning, I didn't want people to spend anything on me. I wanted to be purely backed by ad revenue. And that was taken away from me early into my YouTube career because of the Content ID, like, apocalypse that happened at the start of 2013. So I started becoming a Patreon creator just because it was the only way that I could make money anymore for a while until I got ads back. And then I made the mistake of not putting ad breaks in my videos until recently. Of, like, because I had a Patreon, my mentality was like, oh, well, the patrons, you know, they don't want to have to watch ads. So I'm not going to put ad breaks in the videos, which I threw away hundreds of thousands of dollars by not doing that. Huge mistake. I've been making way more money now, even on videos with smaller view counts, just because of the ad breaks. So, not more money than ever or anything like that. But, you know, I've been making a lot more based on the views that I'm getting than I would have been. So, you know, I left a lot of money on the table constantly trying to be weirdly moralistic about my career, about, like, not wanting to have fucked people over because I knew that I would, and I ended up doing it anyways. So, like, you know, it's hard for me as a content creator to ask for, like, forgiveness, especially when there's lots of stuff I still haven't delivered on, that I still want to deliver on, that I still, like, consider myself to have promised. And I obviously can't expect people who I owe something to want to give me anything more. But I never should have created those circumstances. Like, the point of this for me was always, like, you are either down or you're not. Like, it's not about, you know, it's not about a product or a service or anything like that. It's about wanting me to exist because you want me to be able to keep doing what I'm doing, whatever that is, you know? And there's only so many people who are ever going to feel that way. And I'm very happy to realize that there are certainly a number of them, because there's no reason I'd have any support left if there was not people who are willing to just, like, rough through whatever because they just don't think it's that big a deal, or they have the money, or they just want me to exist, whatever it is. I can't thank those people enough because they've allowed me to keep existing and keep being able to do this. But I don't think it's weird or unreasonable that I've, lost a lot of support. When I transitioned from Brony to anime YouTuber, I burned through, a huge number of subscribers, a huge number of patrons, and I recouped them eventually. And I knew that it would happen, and I was willing to take the risk, and I just figured anime is a bigger category than bronies. And at this point, as an anime YouTuber, I think that there's a lot of people I'll just never be able to win back. That like I've already, they already made up their mind about me years ago, and they're not interested in making like changing judgment based on whatever I might have changed. And there's lots of fans who just aren't interested in what I'm doing anymore. So like, to me, it's like I know there's no real hope of salvation except people like deciding that whatever I'm doing currently is worth paying attention to. And like with Anime Alphabet, I really do think that the biggest problem it has as a series is that not enough people know about it. That like these are videos that by all rights should be more popular than they are, and so they're either failing because I suck personally, not the videos themselves, or because they're just not reaching people. They're not being promoted. They're not, nobody knows about them. I think it's one part that and one part people just going like, fuck you, I don't like you anymore. Doing the video series long term, there is a height I can imagine it getting to if it catches on and gets the attention that I think it deserves. And, if it reaches the cap of like my expectations, that would be great. It would be enough for me to make that like my main career and focus on that and like say, okay, I make Anime Alphabet. Pay me if you want Anime Alphabet to keep going, and I'll also release other stuff on the side that maybe I'll sell a book one day or something, but it will be a book that's out and I have a copy I can send you, no more crowdfunding, no more like promising anything I don't already know how to deliver on, basically, because I've fucked that up a whole lot. But yeah, like to me at this point in my career, I see it as like the only way people are ever going to trust me again is if I can stay the course on something long enough that people like get used to it and have a familiarity and like it, and the people who would like it find it. And Anime Alphabet is the design of it as a series is this is a version of anime content I can see myself doing forever. It's just talking about classic shows once a month in super depth. Like it's always satisfying enough that I would want to do it, and I don't see any reason that the videos couldn't be successful based on their quality and subject matter. So like, if I manage to do all 26 of them and they never take off, the 2 whole years, obviously I will fucking change careers. But, as it is, I don't really know what to fill in the rest of that with. There's, this video is a start. I know there's certain videos I need to recreate from the old days. Like I made the We Have Forgotten Love video as a follow-up to the old We Have Accepted Mediocrity video, because like I don't like the points I made in that video anymore. I don't want it to be up and related to me, but I have to answer for it because people still have a lot of thoughts and feelings about that video, and so there needs to be something that kind of takes its place. I think that needs to happen as well for the old 300 anime recommendations video. There needs to be a replacement for that. There needs to be, follow-ups and replacements to things that were tent poles of mine that I know I can update and change and make better. But also something that people, are coming to me for because they're like, oh, this is so uniquely Trixie that I need Trixie to give this to me. That this person's not getting from Anime Alphabet. They were getting from the vlogs. And, I can't give this commenter, I cannot give him what he seems to want, which is like a trip back to 2016 before, my first serious relationship. But, what I can give is something new that we can kind of work to define together. It's a weird process when you're trying to like haggle with your audience about what you're doing, as opposed to just like releasing something and people get it and they like it and it's all right, cool, this thing is out. You know, if I had an idea that I thought was so obvious that like it would definitely work out that way, I would go for it. But for me, it's usually more experimentation. It's usually like, let's do a few live streams in this style and see how people respond. Let's do a few of this or that type of video and see what we get, and keep experimenting. So that's what this is. I'm going to check the response to this, see what it leads to, see if I gain or lose or love or hate or what kind of comments there are. But yeah, like if you're trying to understand what's going on with me, I'm making anime alphabet. I play some video games in my off time. You know, I hang out with my fiance. We cook. We go out sometimes. We go for walks. It's not particularly exciting. It's a lot of watching anime and working and thinking about my job and trying to figure out how to make Blu-rays and all this other bullshit. Yeah, alright. That's it for this video. Check out all my links in the description. Thanks again to everybody who supported me. And remember that Digibro is dead. Trixie the Golden Witch is just a character. And, you know, it's fine if you want to have some kind of relationship with this character, but it's not the same as me. And, you know, I want to find a way. I want to find a distance that works for everybody. Let's put it that way. Anyway, that's all.